we are moving on to the 3-year financial plan. And Brian, ball's in your court.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Law. My name is Brian Miles, and today I'll be briefing you on our proposed 3-year financial plan for the college. As you'll recall, we came before you at the November board meeting. We introduced this plan, we provided you a brief overview, and we mentioned that we would be back here today to talk more specifically about the contents of the plan. To help facilitate the discussion, we have taken components of the plan and divided them into 3 categories that I will brief for you in just a moment. Those categories include the following: adjusting revenue and expense, developing a personnel plan, and also reducing the college's reliance on our fund balance. Now I'm going to show you a few slides momentarily, following which we will break down into 2 groups to discuss more specifically the contents of the slides and also the 3-year plan. After we convene for about 45 minutes, we'll reconvene in this setting. We will discuss what the groups shared, and we will hopefully craft recommendations to move forward from a budget standpoint for fiscal year 2017-2018. We realize that in proposing a 3-year plan, there are a lot of initiatives we'd like to undertake, but we want to approach this in a sensible manner, gradually approaching these changes and not trying to take them all on at once. So without further ado, let me go to the first slide here. As I mentioned, there are 3 buckets of items that we'll discuss. The first is adjusting revenue and expense. And I'm going to give you a current situation under each of these buckets, potential risk, and then propose some options on how we can confront the items within these buckets. Our current situation, as you well know, and as we've spent the last few months discussing, include the following. We are experiencing a decrease in enrollment and therefore tuition associated with enrollment. We're experiencing a decrease in state appropriations over the last year, not by much, but a little bit. We have experienced increase in health insurance costs, and we've proposed to you plan modifications which will take effect January 1st, 2017. We also have an increase in waiver expense, which we will discuss during our breakout session. Suzanne Gardner has been kind enough to draft an informative memo about which waivers we are statutorily required to provide and which waivers we have discretionary authority over. And then at the end of that memo, she has recommendations. So again, that will be shared with you during the breakout session. The potential risk of leaving things as is this. It creates a negative impact on our fund balance or our net position. We are required by the state to maintain a fund balance of 5% of our total budget. And so that represents about $8 million. Currently, our fund balance, our unencumbered fund balance, stands at $14.9 million. But our fund balance has reduced significantly over the last few years. We have taken on some very good initiatives, which has required us to spend some funds down. But now we're in a position where we want to address the fund balance and make sure it doesn't dip below current levels too much more. Here are some of the options associated with adjusting our revenue and expense going forward. Obviously, we want to stabilize and increase our enrollment, thereby generating more revenue associated with tuition. We discussed earlier in the fall modifying our health insurance plan. We've made those changes, which will become effective shortly. We'll continue to monitor this plan in the next few years. We want to increase auxiliary revenue by improving services. Just before my presentation, you heard Jim Wechter talk about the possibility of leasing space college-wide, and we think this is an opportunity for us to use some of our facilities, adopt a more formal rental program for our facilities to generate additional auxiliary revenue. Reduce discretionary waivers. We'll talk about that through Suzanne's memo during our breakout sessions. Maximize performance funding. This is somewhat of a hidden target at the moment. We don't have all the information we feel we would need from the state to predict where we will end up with performance funding each year, but we'll continue to ask the state for that information in the hopes of receiving it. Earlier this fall, we told you we want to place an emphasis on reducing travel. We exceeded our travel budget, so we want to curb that expense. We want to invest in budgeting software. We feel this is important. Operating an operating budget of $155 million is not easy, and when you don't have good budgeting software, the opportunity for variance or human error in those calculations is very real, and we think we can gain some efficiencies in time, energy, and also with our calculations by investing in some quality budgeting software. And finally, conducting supervisor level budget training. We give people college-wide authority over their departmental budgets, but we don't have a good program in place where we would educate them on the ins and outs of all the budgeting. We feel we can enhance this opportunity and provide greater clarity on budget issues. Developing a personnel plan. This is our second bucket, and recognizing that personnel is our largest expense at $118 million a year, we feel this deserves some attention. Our current situation is this. Personnel represents 77% of our budget. We have a $17 million expense associated with temporary personnel. That includes OPS, adjunct, and supplemental pay for faculty. We also have an overtime budget that we're exceeding on an annual basis for the last 2 or 3 years, and we want to make sure that we get that in line as well. Potential risks, obviously a decrease to our fund balance or net position, as I stated under the first bucket. This is also a situation where we will continue to see a decrease in revenue over expense if we don't change our habits here, and then there'll be less money for student-oriented initiatives. Here are some of the options we could implement to help with this portion of the budget. We would like to reduce personnel expense over the next 3 years by 2%, and we have a variety of ways in which we can do that. Here are some of those ways. We want to develop a strategic plan which would include keeping people employed, following our current hiring and salary discipline, where we hire at the base of each salary grade, reevaluate positions as vacancies occur, determining whether those vacancies need to be filled and whether those positions are absolutely necessary. Capturing what we call lapse money from those positions. This is the salary and benefits associated with those vacant positions that's not being used. And then developing a discipline for how we approach part-time work at the college. This would include overtime employees. It would include other professional services employees or OPS employees. Currently, we have some of those employees who reach or exceed the 2,080 hours mark and then become eligible for Florida Retirement System benefits. It's not really our intentional to have OPS individuals move to our benefits system, so we want to make sure that we have a program in place where we could curb that issue as well. Our funding a salary increase is also part of this bucket. You've heard us say before that we're striving to put in place a 2.5% salary increase for employees college-wide sometime within the next fiscal year. And just to put a number in your mind, a 2.5% salary increase would be about $2.1 million. Okay? Here's our third bucket, reducing reliance on fund balance or our net position, and you saw my concerns with the first two buckets, so you can understand why this slide exists. Current situation, as I described before, is that our unencumbered fund balance is approximately $15 million. The state requires us to keep at least $8 million on hand. Using fund balance for recurring expense is something we've done probably out of necessity for the last few years, but we want to get away from this practice. And there are two line items in our budget that include fund balance. And what's happening is that we're starting to use, or we've been using, that fund balance under those line items as recurring revenue to cover recurring expense, and we just need to get away from that practice at this point. There was good justification, I'm sure, for providing those line items in the budget when we did, but I think we're in a better position now to consider removing those. Here are the potential risks involved. Continuing to decrease the fund balance, that would subject us to state monitoring if we fell below that 5% that I described. We would increase in potential exposure for audits, and we might become less attractive as a grantee for agencies that want to dole out some grant money. So very serious considerations there. Here are some of the options involved. Reducing our reliance on fund balance, as I mentioned, reducing or eliminating over the next 3 years those two line items that currently tap into our fund balance. And those line items are the stabilization reserve and also the one-time non-recurring fund line item. And that includes purchase order roll forwards. Those are expenses that are encumbered in one fiscal year that roll over into the next. We carry the revenue associated with those rollovers, and we should be carrying over the expense as well. So that's my presentation. Again, I have tried to bring together some of the components from the three-year plan, recognizing that it's a robust plan and we don't want to tackle it all at once. But this should give us something to chew on during our breakout sessions. I'm happy to take questions on these slides or the three-year plan now, and I'm happy to take questions after when we reconvene. I do want to say that as we get together in our breakout sessions, you'll receive two items that your group can work with. One is the informative memo that Suzanne Gardner has put together on waivers that I previously mentioned. The other is an interactive spreadsheet that your groups can use to fiddle with some of the amounts. You can see how reducing one amount will increase in another area or vice versa. That interactive spreadsheet also has Mr. Stonecipher, what you referred to as a profit and loss statement at the last board meeting. That information is included in there. That's our statement of net position. You can fiddle with that as well. Finally, my team, my budgeting team, will be available to assist with the spreadsheet in those groups. Jeanette Hunt and Amy Lockhart will be at your disposal.
Is there a printout of these slides that'll be with us as well?
I don't know that we have a printout, but we can certainly call them up on the...
Well, I can just take my computer. Yeah. It's not a big deal. Okay, with that said, any questions? Mr. Gibbons isn't here, but any questions now, or do we want to go to breakout session and then come back?
I have one quick question. On the fund balance side, as we look at one of the options being to eliminate the stabilization reserve and one-time non-recurring events, are we taking those away completely, or are we just moving that from the fund balance to another expense area within the budget?
We would like to reduce the amounts that are in those line items gradually over the three-year period.
Okay.
So that they don't get shuffled.
So they don't get shuffled, and so that money does not continue to be used for recurring expenses.
Any other questions, comments? We'll move to breakout. Okay, let's move to breakout. Team one, me, Mayor Foster, Dr. Law, Tanja, Brian, Richard, Dr. Locadate, Lockhart, and Jean Trimble. Team two is Deborah, Nathan, Dr. Cooper, Dr. Praggio, Heather Robertson, Jeanette Hunt, and Pepper Harth. I'm going to take this with me.
All right, as you deploy into your two dream teams here, we have team one in the very back and team two just diagonally here. And as you interact with the two spreadsheets, you'll also see this screen, which is brainstorming software. And as you have recommendations, board members, if you would have your scribe capture those, and then we will reconvene and identify our top two recommendations per team. Thanks very much. Let's mix it up a little bit. Let's ask team two to share just to highlight some of your ideas.
You're up. Too fast. When we talked about it earlier, we were talking about setting a target for the, I think Mr. Foster did a very, very good job of describing how we can set a target for marketing and what that number is and how we get to that number and being able to, with some predictability, to be able to tell whether we're going to be in that range. So I think that was the first one. The second one is, to have a, one of the things that I did over the past month is spend some time with the gentleman that's over the Tampa Bay Veterans Association He was saying that we have more veterans here than USF has that goes through here and have a big recruiting effort centered around just veterans. And that would help be with a more consistent plan towards who's coming here, because once the word gets out there, we are very good at making sure veterans get what they need and have a kind of wraparound services that provide them with the care and stuff that they would need to be successful in college. Then we would see probably more influx of veterans coming to St. Petersburg College, which they're already here. We just need to continue to increase on those programs. Identify high demand programs and options to assess the viability of the current programs. I don't know that. Which one was that one? Was that the one we go to programs?
This is what we're saying, refresh the programs. we
Oh,
have. Look
yeah,
at
so
it.
go out and work with the business community and other emerging industries and figure out how we revamp and make and kind of tailor make even some programs to different corporations and companies to make sure that they stay engaged, but also send their employees back to SBC, see us as a resource, and send their employees back to get retooled, retrained, and then also just get some training. Mr. Foster came up with a good tagline that if you want to, fix the air conditioning, then go to PTEC. But if you want to own the company, come to SBC, right? So the other one, yeah. And so then this is kind of centered around the same thing as enhance the Pinellas County workforce, work with the collaboration with the workforce leaders, and provide services and training needed to help them. So that's kind of the thing, but the same thing. Oh yeah, and then that was the comment I made about designing or tailor-making specific curriculum to help place value on the degrees that we offer for the work, the companies that are in our immediate region and around here. And then enhance student faculty engagement by using Spark and other programs to help with on-campus and online career academic advisors. So I think that's it, right? And review our total marketing budget and see how we can change and highlight and show the value of an SPC degree.
Thank you, Team 2.
Can I just make one comment on that? I don't know that it's marketing only that is how we retain. Marketing is a piece of retention and building our students. But I think that this is one of those, it's all of us. It's the one college approach. It's from the classroom to the person that you're talking to at the front desk to the person who answers the phone. I mean, not disagreeing that I think marketing is important, but at the same time, it's retention in this stuff is not just marketing.
I totally agree.
Okay.
I just think you got to get them to the front door to get them to make them
Agreed.
say, right? So I think we got to figure out how. We have to start using some unconventional approaches to how we get people to the front door. If corporations are going to USF and saying, your business degree, we can tailor make this and do that, and we're going to send all of our employees to you. But we want them to see us as the same resource at a lower cost, but getting the same added value. So I think that's, and then Mr. Foster said the course assignments should speak to career aspirations. Yeah, there it is, right there. At the bottom.
Thank you, Team 2. Team 1, can we please hear a highlight of your recommendations?
Sure. A lot of our ideas piggyback directly off of Team 2's. We added expanding the Summer of Success program, which we think can be pretty effective.
This will go.
Yeah, if we focus on that a little bit more. Targeting current high school programs and expanding the recognition to SPC. As you see in the next one, number 4, we can appeal to the students, of course, but also to the parents and focus on the affordability factor, which I know we're doing currently in our new marketing materials. This is something that really sets us apart. They're getting just as good, if not better, of an education for half the price. And if that's not speaking expanding ecosystems where the community has more ownership and responsibility in the educational process. This includes community leaders making sure everyone within those communities is aware of what we offer, why we're doing it, the success rates of the students that we have, and why it's a benefit to those in different communities in our county. And then number 11 there, the importance of balancing digital and face-to-face marketing. We talked quite a bit about this. Digital changes daily. It's amazing. The ability we now have to focus on very specific groups of people in the digital realm, and St. Pete College does that very well. But with higher technology comes the need for higher touch personally, and we need to always be recalibrating every single year constantly what that means between our focus on digital and our focus on face-to-face and personal communication. And that is not a one-time answer. That's an answer that changes every day. So it's just going to be an ongoing job here. And then we finished off talking about doing a better job of targeting adult learners within the community, and then also strategic online growth for our online programs outside of Pinellas County. The majority of our online students are still within the borders of our county. There's no reason why we cannot go further other than not wanting to step on people's toes. There's no reason we can't go outside of Pinellas County and drive people to our online platforms and classes.
Team one, is there any discussions related to enrollment recommendations?
No, other than the only thing I will say is I'm looking at the community outreach snapshot, and to see what we're doing and where we're going, really, I mean, I know we've always done it, but to see all this stuff is really impressive. I mean, that this doesn't just happen. There's a lot of hard work that has gone on to get here. And I just wanted to make sure that, you know, we're talking about what we can do better, and that's great, but at the same time, we'd be remiss as a board if we weren't looking at what's been accomplished already.
That's right.
So.
Mm-hmm.
Will you take a moment and look this way, and Ms. John, to see this
All the tidbits and nuggets here, I'll just go straight to the second drawing. You know, we highlighted our accomplishments that we noted this morning. You know, increasing the students of color, learning centers, the MOK data service, also college experience, academic pathways. You know, getting a nice look at those and how they sit on top of the strategies and plans that we have moving forward there with our 3-year financial plan, enrollment marketing, facilities accreditation. You know, we've got this pathway going to one of the highlights we talked about, the studying abroad, global expansion, but also just taking St. Pete College and all of our accomplishments into the future there. So.
transform this into a final piece of artwork, full color. So stay tuned for the real-time record on that. Thank you for the opportunity to support today. Great job.
Our last tidbit is wrap up and next steps. Do we have any wrap up?
Well, my thanks for engaging with us today. 4 topics that candidly were a little more substantive than I thought. I really thought we would just touch base on most of them, and everybody dug in a lot better. So thank you for your engagement. It's very encouraging to all of us. You know what we do now is you'll get, we'll all get a copy of the real-time record, so everybody will have everything we talked about. We'll go ahead and distill that into action strategies, and we'll bring those to the January board meeting. So everybody gets another chance at them in a distilled form. If you don't see what you think is important from today, speak up, but we try to be as faithful as we can. From that, we'll take those to the the budget workshop, and we've got some ideas to change it this year, so that'll be good. I think we're gonna have to find money to do some new things. We're not gonna sit around and wait for new money to show up. I feel really encouraged. I'll speak for myself though. I'm trying to say, what is it? We're pretty comfortable with our answers, but they're not working. So we've got to go and rethink what we have to do to make them work, or to make something else work. And I'll put the team through a lot of paces on how do we want to do that. No easy answers. Let's dig down a little bit deeper. I heard our team talking about we need to sharpen the focus on a lot of the things we're doing. They're good to do, but we need to make them more directed, more focused, more impactful. So watch for that to happen. I think we can make progress. Again, my thanks for your willingness to engage with us. Madam Chairman, is this your last appearance?
No, I believe I will be at the 17th January meeting.
Good, then I'll have time to.
That's what I was asking. Because if a quorum is 3 and we have to wait on Mr. Gibbons.
You won't have more. Dr. Law, to your comments, I think you're exactly right. I believe that some of that is we can put feet to the pavement and test and some of just luck, right? We're in the right place, right time. The more we do that, let's work. We've done that in the past, and it's worked out. We'll work on it. So I'm glad to hear, Madam Chair, what y'all have a forum at 9.
And does anyone have anything else to add? No? With that
Thank you
said, we are adjourned.
Good job.
Thank you.
So,
I forgot I was chair twice and started to read.
So may I ask Team 1 to please share your top recommendations, and PJ will scroll as you proceed through them.
You're on. You got it.
Oh, no, I don't want to do it. I'm just making sure it's on.
Well, as the chair, I can't give it, so you have to. I throw the meeting.
Vice Chair Foster.
Golly, which one do I look at? Well, I mean, we had a good conversation about the budget. We did look at and examine these waivers and how we handled that. I think it was consensus, at least from those representatives from the board, that was kind of a drop in the bucket. We weren't going to achieve 7-figure savings overall in the budget by looking at how we handle waivers, although every penny does count, and we're going to look at how some of these waivers go between arts and sport. But really and truly, I think our focus was on the big ticket items. That would be, as I had suggested, looking at capital costs to reduce, or using capital monies to reduce operating. We were looking at overtime and outstanding positions and how those are filled. Certainly that was, anytime you're dealing with personnel decisions, they're not popular for us, but we're not, we weren't appointed to this board to be popular. We were placed on this board to be stewards of college money. So health insurance, we're going to have to look at, again, that's a huge nut. And when you look at what the private sector is having to pay and things like that, the college's health insurance plan is excellent. And it's very affordable, but it comes as a cost to the overall budget. So we're going to look at some additional plan modifications for that. Somebody else came up with budgeting software and really looking line by line, looking at line item reviews of the overall budget, really focusing on need versus want. Someone help me with number 7. What was that?
that's theirs. That's the other team's. It's Team 2.
Oh, I don't want to give Team 2's report. So.
Another reduction in expense.
essentially, if enrollment goes down 2%, everything else
Oh,
goes down 2%.
okay, yes, reduce expenses proportionate to enrollment decline, so, first of all, we have to continue to strategize some of these enrollment issues and come up with ways to not only stop the bleeding, but turn that around. Recruitment, retention of staff, of students, but looking at reducing the overall expenses in proportion to that decline. Yeah, that's
Can
pretty
you
much.
scroll down one more? Up, I think that's all team 2 then.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did some stuff.
All right, great job, Team 1. And Team 2 really picked up steam. They started in on item 7, so if one of you trustees could share your team report.
Sure, gladly. We spent quite a bit of time in deep conversations, so we got started a little slower on writing these down, but we agree with everything that Team 1 said. Our focus was a bit more on driving revenue alongside of cutting expenses, of course, but more focus on driving our revenue stream. So we focused a lot on enhancing our auxiliary services. We don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but I think everybody sitting around the table is in agreement that St. College has many valuable assets that we can use if we partner with the right people within the community. We have new areas of revenue open up to us, and that may mean someone on staff is full-time looking into different areas like that to make those partnerships. I don't know what the details of that are, but I think it's something we need to look at. We also talked a lot about the personnel plan as well, since that was the big ticket item on the budget, reducing that to 75%, which is more in line with the average in the state of Florida for colleges. Also focusing on those temp positions and overtime pay. And then you can see below that right-sizing personnel, hopefully with the potential of increasing salaries. We talked about balancing act between having personnel roll off as they either retire or as we assess the situation, we decide that position is no longer needed at St. College, while also increasing salaries of personnel that stays with us, and try to balance those things out so that we're still saving money, but everybody here is going to think a little bit more about that. And then we talked a lot about the stabilization of enrollment. We realize enrollment in many ways turns off what our economy is doing in the state of Florida. We would like to reassess and look at different ways that we can recruit, get more face time in front of potential students, and try to control those enrollment numbers a little more and be a little more aggressive in that in the next 3 to 5 years. I believe that was
Team 2, any other discussions related to financial recommendations?
We're good?
Number 4, enrollment.
So we have a Diana and Mark. You are next on The Price is Right.
Did you figure that out?
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the board, Dr. Law. Diana and I are here to talk about enrollment, recruitment, and retention. As you all know, most of what we discussed this morning is predicated on enrollment, and therefore the new buildings and some of the activities we want to look forward to doing in the future really need to happen based on what we do enrollment-wise. So we're here to talk about some of the activities we've been participating in. So just a snapshot of our enrollment trend over the last 10 years. It's important to note where we peaked in 2010. This is student semester hours. and then how we've slowly declined over the last 5 years to where we are now. The SSH this morning is actually at negative 3.2%, and the head count is at negative 1.5%. So we're doing some work to try to improve that, to get that up. Yesterday it was at 2.6, I want to say, at SSH in the negative realm, but we're working on that on a daily basis. Here's basically a fancy chart that essentially tells us that when the economy is doing well, your enrollment goes down, and when your enrollment goes up, the economy. So it basically just flips, and we wanted to show you this because it goes all the way back over the lifetime of a Florida employment rate. So just a snapshot for you guys to gain a better understanding of the enrollment trend. And then here's some notable information that we thought was informational for you that you can take away and during the breakout session. The new students are down 9%, or nearly 600 students. We have less older students in the demographic of 22 to 25. You know, Dr. Law said something last night to Diana and I and some other folks. You know, if he had to do it all over again, we would really focus on the workforce enrollment or the certificates. That's an area that we may not have done our best work, but I think with your guidance and input, we can actually take some thoughts from you to work on that particular area. Our Hispanic enrollment is up, our white students are down, and so are the African American students. Now, this is just a snapshot for you all. If you recall a few board meetings ago, we wanted to tell you that enrollment or retention or recruitment is an effort that should be owned by everybody on campus, not only at the campus level, but at our district office, including the board. Here's just some of the outreach activities that we've been doing in conjunction with the provost and the deans and the associate provost, et cetera, just to show you that we are out there in the community. We are trying to gain awareness and build awareness for our programs.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. So this first slide will show you the sources of our direct response marketing budget. As you can see, the majority of that is made up in the digital source, followed by radio. We also do billboards, bus wraps, and print. And this is not all of the marketing, just the direct response that typically generates to bring in more leads into the college and generate inquiries. As you can see, we've seen inquiries increase year over year. The gray bar was to-date numbers as of last fall. We have other sources as well that are not shown here, including enrollment communications, emails, direct mail, et cetera. And the programs that we have targeted, specifically health, business, IT, and engineering, we're noticing are up in enrollment right now. So we need to keep watching that number and see how we can keep pushing this direct response. Following the digital, our strategy includes keyword search, display, retargeting. Year over year, we've reduced our cost conversion by 16% average conversion cost. One of the digital campaigns that we have is our workforce employer campaign. That includes spotlights, testimonials, videos, landing pages, digital ads of employers speaking about why they recommend SPC or that program. They're all programmatic in nature. We've done a lot this year. Last year we were more about in a digital environment trying to be seen out there, and now we're getting more targeted, and that's why you see the reduced costs. And we've also added more keywords and more programs to our digital efforts as well. Blogs, I've seen a 69% greater page view. There's one for every program, and we are creating 10 career and academic communities out of those blogs. Those are all content contributor approach with faculty, deans, and staff, and that helps us rank organically, so we don't pay for those to rank organically on social and on digital. One of the efforts that we did on the top left there, you'll see recently, before we left on Thanksgiving, we grabbed a list of students, I think there was 9,000 at that time, that were currently enrolled that are not registered for the next semester. We were able to load those up into Facebook and then target ads specifically to them. We reached 80% of those, and you can see it was quite a cost-effective campaign at $1.60 per click. And the bottom left will show you the LinkedIn in-mails, and this is higher than the industry standard that LinkedIn reports for an open rate of 61%. We accredit that due to the fact that these come directly from the deans, and they're interested and targeted to people who have shown interest in that program. In terms of branding and PR, we've seen a 98% greater increase in our coverage year over year. from media, press releases. We've launched the biannual SPC magazine, and we have a new parent, student, and financial aid guide, which are also in your packets. And then we've launched this Inspires campaign geared to millennial students, and I'd like to play the video for you now.
It starts with a dream, a vision, a spark of inspiration that lights up your spirit and keeps you moving towards something greater so that you can make a difference. At St. Petersburg College, you don't just get a degree. You get real-world experiences that will change your life. We teach you how to inspire, to create, to explore, to lead. We prepare you for what's next, because what's next matters.
Thank you. Okay, so enrollment communications are those that are sent in our, to students who are already in our database. They might be transfer students, transient students, those returning from previous semesters, or those that have graduated to promote bachelor's degrees. These are always sent out leading up to a start, and as you can see, we've reached a lot of individuals through direct mail and email efforts with this campaign. Looking ahead then, we have launched the CRM for the pre-admissions advisors, and as we know, there's multiple ways that someone can come on board into the college. Whether they walk in, they come in and meet with an advisor and they complete an application, or they go to our website, see one of our ads, complete a request for information form, and then they get followed up on with the pre-admissions advisors. That includes phone calls, and the CRM also deploys emails and direct mail pieces over the course of 90 days to encourage them to enroll. Those pre-admissions advisors reach back out to live chats in the application, and those who've started an application but didn't finish, and so on and so forth. We also are now working to implement the enrollment services team into CRM currently. We look forward to launching the new website at the end of January. That will be geared to prospects and the community, and it should help us to better market and engage students into their areas of interest within the 10 career and academic communities. We look forward to the launch of Fuse as well. We believe that's going to help us better attract high school students to start here, transfer, and go anywhere. And we've been working with deans and provosts on a college-wide high school marketing recruitment plan that is bringing together all of our events for a year so that we can be more proactive, better market our programs, and it includes target audiences of parents, high school, guidance counselors, principals, and of course students. With that, I'll turn it back over to Provost Strickland for him to speak about the Spark advising pages.
All right. Thanks, Diana. So you may recall a couple board meetings ago that we actually had the Spark rollout for our faculty members. Now, this is the actual rollout for our advisors. So now our advisors will be able to see what this particular student, what they're interested in terms of their career path, what their personal information, like if they have kids, and what their goals are. Now you also see, once the student does a self-assessment, that's a series of questions that the student has the ability to answer, and then what we glean from that is whether or not we believe green is good, and then yellow is kind of moderate, and then red is not so good. So here the student, William Law, has indicated study skills is not necessarily his best trait. And so the advisor now knows what they need to work on with that particular student. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see we can actually gain an understanding of where the student is academically right then and there in that semester. So again, remember, we did this for our faculty, and now the advisors will actually have access to this tool beginning in January. This is just a recap of our semester efforts with regards to Smart Start. That's our orientation. I want you to focus on the top left hand. It's nearly 5,000 students who are enrolled in Smart Start. That's a 4-hour non-credit class taught by our academic advisors, or facilitated by them rather. And you'll see that nearly 80% were successful. 20% did not complete the course. And what we do with those students is we make sure that the advisor flags those students, does not let them register for the spring term, However, there is some leeway there. If the student showed good academic ability, we're not going to hold them back from registering for spring term. But if they're not doing so well, then they do absolutely need to sign back up for our Smart Start orientation. So as you can see, this tracks all of our college experience initiatives, and we do this every Wednesday, as you all know. And so this was basically our end of the year report last week. And then I want to make sure that you all see this once again, because this too has an effect on retention. We know that we've identified 10 career and academic communities, and now we've also put together a triad model that includes an advisor, a faculty member, and a learning support person. They are now doing the work. They just began, actually, and they will work throughout this next year on the 10 career and academic communities that you see on your left. We again believe that this will actually help us with retention. When students know what pathway they need to go on, they're likely more to stay. That concludes the presentation.
Any questions?
I have a couple of questions before we go to the breakout. There's a really good slide in here, and I can go back up to it, but basically 2009-10 admissions were high, and there's a cyclical argument, recession-based, unemployment, you know. What number is kind of right in our bailiwick? It's in our wheelhouse. It's a good number that's not really adjusted by inflation or unemployment, but it's just kind of that, if we get this, then we know we're rocking.
Dr. Caraggio would probably be the best person to answer.
I think our goal has also been to increase enrollment 3% per year for the next 3 years has been our goal has been to increase enrollment 3% per year for the next 3 years. So that's been our target goal, and we are trying to, so I have a marketing plan that estimates, okay, in order to reach 3%, I have to obtain this many inquiries. I got to spend the dollars in these sources because they generate more inquiries from others, and the conversion has to continue throughout the funnel at this percentage so that we know that we're going to hit that target goal.
I get it, and I don't disagree. I think that's a great goal, but you can see by the charts that they're going to do this, and I think it's more predictable if we know what that number was. That was right in our bailiwick, that this is where we want to be.
You caught me off guard. You asked me for a number. I'm not used to that. I think we want to grow is what we want to do. I mean, we have to offset some of the bleeding that we're seeing right now as we're declining enrollment. This has been a difficult year. We've been down summer about 6%. We were almost 5% down in the fall. We're trying to make up a gap. At one point, we were down 14% for spring registration, and you heard this morning we're down about 3%, but that's, besides yesterday, that's the closest we've been to getting back to 0. Are you looking for maybe a projected number based on where we project the economy to be and what that relationship would be based on that?
I mean, if you look at enrollment trends, counter-cyclical headcount enrollment, overall in the state, we had crazy numbers in 2010, 2011, and I don't know that we're going to duplicate those. I don't even know that.
No.
Yeah, I agree. We want to stop the bleeding and we want to turn it and grow it. But at some point, there's a number where we can predictably, as Deborah said, flatline, where we know this is where we are. This is. I mean, certainly that's not what our goal. Our goal will always be growth.
Right.
But at least when presenting budgets, we know that there's some predictability.
I think we can work on a projection plan. I think we can work on an enrollment plan if the board would like to see that. And we can look at some of our projected numbers in terms of economic indicators, some of the relationship that our numbers have had based on that, and come up with a plan, a projection where we think we might be next year. If you'll notice in 2014 on that chart I think you're referring to, we actually went against the curve. So we had growth from 213 to 214, and it doesn't really reflect it when you look at the state average and based on the economic indicators. And we were doing some different things there. So I think there certainly is the possibility of offsetting the trend. I don't think just because, I mean, we believe that outside factors of economy have an impact on enrollment, but it doesn't mean we can't grow enrollment. It doesn't mean we can get back to flat, and it doesn't mean we can't get to the point where we're actually increasing enrollment. I think the conversation we just had was real valuable when we really focused on the revenue or portion of the financial plan. And we know that there's a high correlation between where we are financially and where we are in terms of enrollment, because that's our chief income. So I think we really need to spend some time thinking outside of the box on the things that we're doing. Diana mentioned in her presentation, we're trying to do some innovative things with LinkedIn. We're trying to do some innovation things with robocalls from the deans. Spark now has an enrollment component with faculty can work directly with students about retention. We know retention is some of that low-hanging fruit. You know, if we can keep the students, that's going to have a dramatic impact on what our retention. If we can offset even our retention numbers historically, that's going to impact enrollment. And we need to do something to offset the new students coming in, because we're losing students. You know, you saw when new students were down 9%. It's the enrollment engine. If we're losing them coming in the front door, we can offset some of it with retention, but we can't make up the difference at some point. You also saw we're losing some of our older students. So there's things we can do, certainly, and we can put together a plan and bring you some numbers going forward on what we think we might be, and we really all need to think outside the box. I mean, it's really, I think retention and recruitment is everybody's responsibility.
Let me ask, are you asking Bill for what magic numbers we have to have? I'm looking at the slide that has the enrollment trend on it. So if we budget around, I'm going to throw a number out there, so say 600,000 student semester hours. Are you saying that, and I'm not going to say this very well, but I'm trying. Are you asking, do we have a number like 600,000 that our budget is based on, and then anything above that is what I'll call gravy, and then from there we can use the gravy, but that we know our bills are paid at 600.
And then we have faculty, and then we're staffed, and that's
yes.
it. And I don't know that
that's the number
I don't know that it's 600, but it might be 620, or it might be that number. I mean, if we get back up to 681, 682, the economy sucks, and something else has happened.
Yeah.
But if we can get into that 610, 620, and we know that the bills are being paid and that we're adequately staffed, and any more than that, we're playing with house money. That's kind of what I'm looking for. So yeah, if you can do that. I got one other quick question. The FUSE program with USF, is that exclusive or without stepping on Santa Fe or Tallahassee or anyone else? I mean, are there any other partnership potentials that maybe with a Florida Polytechnic or FIU, FAU, again, without stepping on regional toes, are there any other programs where if we partnered, we could have a guaranteed enrollment? Because I think that makes us...
We began to have some conversations with UCF about Direct Connect. We would like to add into that conversation the possibility of online. They have a number of online programs at UCF, so there might be an opportunity for us to look at some of our online enrollment and do it forward. That's a conversation Dr. Cooper had brought forward. So I think there are some partnership opportunities we can build on. FUSE has really just been a pilot, so even between us and Hillsborough, there's only about 50 students at this point. That will grow exponentially once we open that up to our own students, which will be in the spring term. And I think that'll encourage new enrollment and build some of the enrollment from the high schools. And that number, just where that number is today, and Brian can speak more to it from a financial aspect, but our plan was to go flat. So when we built the budget for the current year that we were in, it's based on the number that you see there. The 604, 988 was what our number was for this term. We know enrollment's been less than flat, so that has impacted some of the decisions that were made.
So I promise you, Dr. Roger, I did not plant that question. It's the same question I asked
Yeah,
earlier.
it's very fair.
And I think I can speak to some of it. Some of it is, you know, the new students that we were seeing, a lot of them during the downturn in the economy were coming back, and at that time, I think Dr. Law and folks that worked here put a very robust plan together to make sure that those folks that were coming back in also had kind of their first steps. So we had those at the front door where there was the remedial have to pass the entrance exam and so on and so on. Well, once that was pulled away, remember that some folks now go right and make the choice of whether they want to go into aviation or they go right into courses. A lot of them choose to go right into college courses. We've seen a rapid decline because it's harder now to get that student ready and retain them, to keep them on campus going and work forward in college courses. So the legislature should take some of the brunt of this decrease. But now I agree with you in terms of predictability. We should have some type of model that we can predict when we put this amount of effort into this, that we're going to probably see around about here 2% increase or 2% increase or decrease, and I think we can do some things a little differently. But for the most part, I think that a lot of people have been discouraged about coming to a lot of community colleges because they no longer have that first step to help them get prepared. You would say not, and we see that across the state. It's just not here.
I don't think we can fully recover from the 1720 bill. I think that's still playing a huge part of people's entry into and continuation at the college. So we'll continue work. I think it's a good idea to have a target. That wouldn't hurt my feelings at all.
Any other questions?
I have one. On I think it was the 7th slide, the average conversion cost down 16%. How are you coming up with that number? Is that simply what's invested into a certain campaign versus?
It's made up of all of the keywords or ads that we have placed by different ad groups, how much budget we're putting towards those in order to rank, and then of the conversions that we get, what's the percentage of the cost per the conversion. And so on average, throughout all of our different ad groups that we have, we've decreased 16% on our total spend of what we needed to pay in the past to get that conversion to what we're doing now. And that's just from better optimization, better, more targeted keywords, more relevant landing pages. The fact that we did push a lot to have our brand in year one helped us to have better quality scores and not have to push as hard in year two. It's our first time launching into digital, so, and now we're just going to keep getting more targeted. I'm sorry.